Are we ready?
Yeah.
We ready.
Say what, say what.
We ready.
Say what. We ready for y'all.
All right, y'all. We had a packed agenda today. So if it's all right with y'all, without further ado, I would love to get on into it. With a warm welcome to all of you joining us from all across Georgia. Thank you so much for being here for the Atlanta Get Ready webinar on how we can create ICE sanctuary zones in our congregations, in our neighborhoods, in our schools, and in our workplaces. My name is Mariah Parker. I am with the Union of Southern Service Workers, as well as Playfair ATL, a coalition of labor organizations, immigrant rights groups, housing justice advocates, trying to make sure the World Cup works for everyone. And we know that there's a lot going on federally to suggest that there could be ICE escalations here in the city. We know, based on the history with the Olympics, that there could be criminalization of our unhoused neighbors. There could be criminalization of protests. And are we going to stand for that?
No.
We're not going to stand for that. So that's why we are here today, to learn how we can go ahead and organize against this and get ready for not just the World Cup, but beyond, wherever there may be escalations in state violence, in our bold and visionary struggle ahead for justice for all people. So I want to shout out real quick some of the folks who have convened this call. We got the Union of Southern Service Workers in the house.
Yeah!
We got the Georgia Latino Alliance for Human Rights in the house. We got Project South and the Hunger Coalition in the house. Big shout out to SNAPCO, the Southeast Immigrant Rights Network, Asian Americans Advancing Justice, Atlanta People's Campaign, El Refugio, Casa Alterna, Bard Business, and In-State Atlanta. Talk about a dream team. Make some noise for yourselves if you are joining us today from some of these mighty organizations. And now,
Thank you
pass it
so
over to Annie.
much. Woohoo! Thank you. We're going to actually pass it over to our interpretation team before we get into it. It was so much beautiful energy. So passing it over to Anna.
Thank you, Annie. Gracias, Annie. Hola. Voy a dar un anuncio en inglés y en español rápidamente. Hi, everybody. I will be giving an announcement in English and Spanish very briefly. Para la sesión de hoy vamos a estar proporcionando interpretación simultánea en inglés y en español. We'll be providing simultaneous interpretation in English and Spanish during today's session. Así que les vamos a pedir de favor que nos ayuden a co-crear este espacio bilingüe. We're going to ask you to please do your part in helping us co-create this bilingual space. Así que a menos que seas completamente bilingüe en inglés y en español, tienes que seleccionar un canal de idiomas para participar hoy. So, unless you are completely bilingual in both English and Spanish, you must pick a language channel in order to participate today. A continuación, estaremos dando instrucciones para acceder a los canales de interpretación. También están escritas en el chat para que puedas referirte ahí también. In a moment, we will be giving the instructions on how to access the language channels, but they are already in the chat as well, and so you can refer to them there too. To access the interpretation in English, you're going to select the globe in the lower part of your screen that says Interpretation. Click that globe and select the language that you would like to listen to today. Para acceder a la interpretación en español, le vas a dar clic al globo en la parte inferior de tu pantalla que dice algo sobre interpretación de idiomas. Dale clic a ese globito y selecciona el idioma en el que te gustaría escuchar durante la sesión de hoy. Puedes activar la opción de silenciar audio original para solamente escuchar la voz de tu intérprete. Y para escuchar el audio original lo puedes dejar sin silenciar. Puedes cambiar tu selección en cualquier momento. You can toggle the mute original audio option to only hear your interpreter's voice, but to listen to the original audio, you can leave it unmuted and you can change your selection at any time. Mándame un pulgarcito arriba si ya estás en el canal de español. Send me a thumbs up if you're already in the English channel. Si eres bilingüe en español-inglés, mándame un corazoncito. If you're English-Spanish bilingual, send me a little heart. Y que no se te olvide hablar español en el canal de español e inglés en el canal de inglés. Don't forget to speak Spanish in the Spanish channel and English on the English channel. Vamos a empezar. Let's get started.
Thank you so much for that. And passing it back to Mariah. Woo, and that was some beautiful energy you brought us in with. Thank you.
Beautiful energy, beautiful language justice, and we're going to have a beautiful call overall. Starting off with a grounding in what is May Day, why we as the Union of Southern Service Workers are choosing to be part of this fight, why it is so important for all workers to come together in this moment. And it is with great honor that I'm about to pass it over to my comrade, Erica Mead. But first, we have a really important member of our community to lift up with a moment of silence. Denny Adan Gonzalez tragically died by suicide in Stewart Detention Center on April 28th, one of dozens of deaths in ICE detention in Georgia so far this year. Deaths in detention and murders by ICE and police have increased dramatically in 2026. And so we want to hold a moment of silence for all of the families who have lost people to state repression and incarceration in all its forms, as well as to our fallen community member, Denny Adan Gonzalez. Please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you all so very much. And now we know the stakes. Let's get into what is bringing so many of us into this movement in this moment of May Day, which has such historical significance for workers around the world. And so once again, I'm excited to introduce y'all to our first speaker today, Erica Mead, a Waffle House worker and elected rep with the Union of Southern Service Workers. Make some noise for Erica.
Hey y'all, how y'all doing? Pardon me. My name is Erica. I'm a dues-paying member of the Union of Southern Service Workers, and I am a Waffle House worker in Brookhaven, Georgia, where there is a very large immigrant community. I just want to say I'm so honored to be able to speak on this panel with so many other amazing panelists and fighters in the state, in the city, in this county, Fulton County, DeKalb County. Thank you for having me. So today is May Day. It's May 1st is International Workers' Day. And some of y'all may know the history. You know, workers in the 1800s, they fought to achieve the 8-hour workday, which we all enjoy today. But I found that when I'm talking to my coworkers on the job at Waffle House, and I'm telling them why we're hitting the streets, why we're not shopping, the thing that gets them the most fired up is I just say point blank period, this is F the billionaires. We're sick and we're tired of showing up to work every day for poverty wages. I was just talking to my coworker the other day and he said, at this point, it doesn't even feel like there's a middle class anymore. It just feels like it's the rich and the poor. We're starting to wake up to the fact that these billionaires, they don't care about us. These billionaires are paying us poverty wages. We're not going for that anymore, and that's why we're standing up on this May Day and we're saying enough is enough. On this May Day, there is a great sense of urgency around why we have to organize. And that's because ICE is in our community, terrorizing our churches, terrorizing our workplace, terrorizing our schools. Anywhere they can get their hands on, they're going to bring terror. But we're fighting back against that. Let me give y'all an example. As y'all know, I work in Brookhaven, Georgia, on Buford Highway. Last year, in November, the day before Thanksgiving, I was getting off my third shift, night shift, around 7 in the morning, and I was waiting for the bus. As I'm waiting for the bus, I see 3 unmarked cars pull over a landscaping truck. 3 masked men each get out of their own car, and they walk up to the landscaping truck, and without even saying anything, they motion for the driver to get out of the truck, and he does, and when he does, they put him in handcuffs, and without saying anything, they put him in the back of their car, and they drive off. I was filming this, and I was asking the men in the mask, what is y'all's agency? What's y'all's badge number, and what's y'all's name? What is the reason for this arrest? The only thing that they could give me in response was mocking and laughing. They don't take us seriously, but ICE, you need to know we take you very seriously, and we are going to fight you, and we plan on winning that battle, and we are not going to let you come into our communities and terrorize us, terrorize workers, terrorize citizens, terrorize immigrants. We're standing up for each other, and we're not letting you come in. We're kicking you out. ICE affects everybody. We had a coworker at my store who had to stop working at a store a couple weeks ago. He himself was an immigrant, and he was originally from India, but he's been living and working in the United States for the past 10 years. He had to leave the United States and go back to his home country, India, against his will. And the reason that he had to do that was because it was going to cost him $80,000 to renew his residency.
Shame.
Keep in mind, he's been here 10 years. On top of that, he works 2 full-time jobs, one at Waffle House, a second job at Whole Foods as a pastry chef in the morning. He works 2 full-time jobs and is barely scraping by. So now he's being asked to pay another $80,000 a year. Where is the justice in that? We want a sensible immigration system that is not present when we're asking immigrants to pay $80,000 a year just to live here, when they contribute so much to our economy, so much to our community, so much to our city. He gave Waffle House his call-out date that he had to leave by, but he had to stop coming into work about 2 weeks before then because his residency had expired, and he was scared that he was going to get picked up on the way to work by ICE. And he told me, I can't risk that, because now if ICE picks you up, they're not just going to deport you, they're going to hold you in jail for 2 to 3 years. And we saw what happened at Stewart Detention Center on April 28th. We can't afford this. We're not going to let anybody go to jail, and that's why we're standing up and we're fighting. Keep in mind, the owner of Whole Foods is Jeff Bezos, who is the 3rd richest person in the world. Why is my coworker working 80 hours a week when Jeff Bezos probably works 0? Why is my coworker working 80 hours a week when Joe Rogers III, CEO of Waffle House, is a billionaire and he working nothing? We're sick and we're tired. When Joe Rogers III is done with his day, he goes back to his mansion. My coworkers go back to their hotels. They go back to the red roof. Some of my coworkers are even going back to their car in the parking lot because we sleep in cars in parking lots and we're sick and tired of it. These companies are worth billions because of us.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
This May Day, we're calling for no school, no shopping, no work. And that is so important right now because people are being taken out of their homes. People are being snatched off the streets. We're telling these CEOs they'll have a choice. You can either stand with the workers, stand up with us, make the society equal for everyone, make sure everybody is getting paid, or you can stand with this corrupt administration, this corrupt MAGA administration that nobody supports. And I'm gonna let y'all know, to the CEOs, to the bosses, y'all, if you choose to stand with this administration, you are going to lose. Because we don't stand on the losing side, we stand on the winning side. So make y'all's choice right now. Because we will win, and if y'all choose this administration, you are going to lose. And I wanna address all the other workers on the call because I am a worker and that's what I care about most. Y'all, I'm calling off work today, but I wanna be honest. When we call off work by ourselves, when we decide to withhold our rent today by ourselves, when we come into work and we're pissed off about something and we got an attitude and we just make an offhand complaint to our manager, this doesn't affect them. But what does affect them? When we stand up together, when our whole block says no, our landlords are not getting a single cent today, when our whole store says, you know what, we're not coming in today because we're sick and tired of $5 an hour for the work that we do. That's when we really make a change. We're not going to Publix today. We're not going to Kroger today. We're not going to the movie theater today. We're not going nowhere today because that money is our money. We make it and we're not spending it. Today is May Day. We're standing up. We're showing these billionaires the money that you have. We made that for you. We're not taking it anymore. Happy May Day, y'all, and let's keep fighting.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, Erica. And like I see y'all saying in the chat, we got to stand together. We got to stand strong. We got to show solidarity, and that is what today is all about. And so, speaking of what we're going to talk about in the next hour we have together, we're next going to hear stories from the front line, from folks at the Georgia Latino Alliance, from Human Rights, testimonies from their struggle. We're going to get a little bit of the global perspective with some of our dear comrades over at Project South, as well as the legislative impact, what's going on locally, what's happening in our state and how it's impacting our communities, before hearing a bit about this vision for sanctuary zones free of ICE, free from criminalization, where our communities can thrive by protecting one another. And last, we're going to close out with some invitations to take part in the building of this movement with these great folks who have convened this call. So throughout, you'll see in the chat some resources we hope that you'll plug into to continue to build. And with that, I am so honored and thankful to pass it over to Selena from Georgia Latino Alliance for Human Rights to talk to us a little bit about what they're seeing on the front lines of the immigrant rights struggle.
Hello, everybody. Selena here with GLAHR, South Georgia Community Organizer with GLAHR. And I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to my compañero, my comrade, Ángel. So, aquí te lo dejo.
Ok. Hola, buenas tardes. Hola, buenas tardes. Tengan los presentes el día de hoy. Me presento. Mi nombre es Ángel de Jesús Morgado Martínez. Soy del estado de Veracruz, del país de México. Tengo 41 años de edad. Actualmente vivo aquí en Estados Unidos, al sur de Georgia. Vivo por la calle Highway Sur 125 en el condado de Tipton. En este 1 de mayo, de la fecha conmemorativa de movimientos laborales, quiero compartir mi experiencia con la situación de las redadas que ha llevado a cabo ICE en la presente administración del presidente hoy en turno, Donald Trump. Comparto que en el condado de Tipton, en el que vivo, el 26 de marzo de 2026, desde muy temprano hubo un intenso operativo por parte de inmigración. Muchas personas desconocían que esto iba a pasar. Ya con anticipación, semanas antes, en los grupos, por ejemplo, el grupo de WhatsApp, nos anticipaban de movimientos. Algunas personas no querían, algunas sí, pero de manera sorpresiva, sin esperárselo a la gente, desde muy temprano hubo chequeos, o sea, operativos intensos de inmigración, aprovechando cuando la gente va a trabajar. Algunos padres y madres llevan a sus hijos a las escuelas y pues ese día prácticamente mucha gente no asistió a las escuelas y lo que es a sus trabajos. Ese día, pues, a mi hermano y a mí, perdón, casi nos agarran porque no esperábamos eso. Afortunadamente se nos hizo tarde ese día y pues en ese momento la aplicación del grupo que hay de WhatsApp llegaron fotos y videos. Fue así que miramos que había presencia de ICE. Este día estábamos a punto de salir de nuestro domicilio nosotros para el trabajo, cuando repentinamente, como les comento, llegaron esos mensajes. Entonces, ya no pudimos ir a trabajo nosotros. Nos quedamos prácticamente varios días. No salimos. Entonces, muchos compañeros me avisaban, compañero, mira, hay muchos chequeos en diferentes partes del condado de Tipton. No vayas a salir. Y empezamos a correr la voz sobre la situación. Actualmente uno está en un estado de psicosis porque no puedes ir tranquilamente a comprar a la Walmart o a la Lowe's. Si antes yo iba por semana 2 o 3 días, pues ahorita de plano no puedo asistir ahí porque incluso ni a cargar gasolina. Ya no sé si hay un carro particular, me va a cerrar el paso y se van a bajar agentes de ICE para detenerme. Eso uno está con ese miedo. Actualmente, si yo trabajaba a 1 hora de distancia de aquí, de mi condado, o 2 horas, ya dejé de hacerlo, porque por el temor de que pueda haber un retén en el trayecto, porque paso varios condados y pues es mucho riesgo para mí. Yo actualmente me dedico a trabajar lo que es en el campo y trabajo lo que es en jardinería. Entonces, tengo que estar prevenido. Mm, yo me siento más seguro no viajar a lugares muy distantes. Yo les sugiero a los compañeros que cuando antes de salir siempre revisen el grupo porque esa información en el caso mía y de mi hermano nos salvó. No fuimos capturados por eso. Entonces, también están las aplicaciones, que es una aplicación que es para el tránsito, vía de tránsito que se llama WASE y la otra de Google Mapas. Eso nos ayuda prácticamente a disminuir lo que son las posibilidades de ser detenidos. Eso es lo que yo quiero compartir con ustedes. De igual manera, aprovecho la ocasión para enviarles un cordial saludo y que tengan un buen día.
Awesome. And I think we're gonna pass it over to la compañera Rosario. Ro- No sé si.
Um, Rosaria está ahí.
While we wait on Rosario, can we pass it over to our next speaker?
Um,
Let's see
Rosaria,
who we
I
got
think
on
she's
tap.
there.
Do y'all want to circle back? And for now, we can move on to hear a little bit more from our legal and advocacy director at Project South. How's that sound to y'all? I'm seeing some clouds from Rita. I'm seeing some trumpets and horns from Daniel. So what we do is we work our way through the program. We're going to jump around a little bit to hear from so many incredible people. I am very thrilled to up next welcome Azadeh Shashahani, the Legal and Advocacy Director at Project South, to help put us in a global perspective. Take it away.
Thank you all so much, and it's great to be with you on this May Day. Before I start, I'd like to reiterate our decades-long call to shut down the deadly Stewart Detention Center. As I'm sure many of you all already heard, another migrant has died by suicide at Stewart, the 33-year-old Denny Adan Gonzalez of Cuba. This marks the fourth suicide at Stewart and the 14th death at this deadly ICE prison. Shut down Stewart now. And I would like to focus on, again, on this May Day, the role of US foreign policy on forced migration. And the reason this is important to highlight is because what we often don't hear about in mainstream coverage of immigration or even immigrants' rights is the core reason why people are forced to come to this country. I mean, it's not like, we wake up one day and we decide that, well, today I'm going to go to the US because it sounds like fun. A lot of us are forced to leave our homes behind. It's very difficult. It's very tragic to leave our countries and our homes and our families and our neighbors behind. And so one of the core reasons is US foreign policy. So US foreign policy, specifically war making and destabilization, is at the root of forced migration from the global south. Human rights advocates must address the problem at its heart. Our most important obligation is to create public awareness about the roots of forced migration as steeped in US foreign policy. And we cannot and should not divorce this issue from the broader discussions around immigrants' rights. So just to share a little bit of my own story, I was born in Iran in February 1979, 4 days after the Iranian Revolution. My name Azadeh means free-spirited in Persian, signifying the hopes of my parents and many others for what the revolution would bring. Their hopes were soon to be dashed, however, as the oppressive regime of the Shah of Iran was replaced by a theocracy that soon crushed all of its opposition. And as Iran got entangled in the 8-year Iran-Iraq war, initiated by Saddam Hussein's 1980 invasion into Iranian soil. And at the time, it's very important to remember that the US government at the time very much supported the Iraqi dictator and this invasion of Iran. So I clearly remember the nights when the four of us, my parents, my sister, and myself, would hold hands and sit underneath the stairs in our house in Tehran with a blanket around us in an improvised tent with all lights turned off as sirens warned of a missile attack by Saddam's forces. During the last year of the war, I was in 3rd grade, and that's when we had to flee Tehran because Saddam who was a friend of the US government as a reminder at the time, was missile bombing our neighborhoods nonstop. We were among the lucky ones. Our house was never hit. Others were not so lucky. Iranians, especially those near the border, had their houses and sometimes entire neighborhoods flattened and were made refugees. And 1 million people lost their lives in the war. In addition, thousands of Iranians were killed by chemical weapons utilized by Saddam Hussein. All of us who lived in Iran during that time bear the psychological scars of the war. It pains me to know that another generation of Iranian children have to live with the deep horror of war, and many of them are being killed by US bombs. I remember how I felt even as a young child about US government support for an invader who was bombing us indiscriminately on a daily basis. This was, however, not the first instance of US intervention in Iran. Every Iranian can tell you about the 1953 CIA engineered coup against Mohammad Mossadegh, the popular prime minister of the first democratically elected government in Iran. He had committed the sin of wanting his country, Iran, to regain control over its natural resource, oil. As a result, the US and British governments toppled him and the Shah returned to power. I often wonder what would have happened if that coup had not worked, if Mossadegh had been allowed to govern, if democracy had been allowed to flourish. I think the course of recent Iranian history would have been very different. And those of us who either before the revolution or afterwards have been forced to leave our country because of political persecution or lack of educational and economic prospects contemplate this question often. And of course, the same scenario played out in many parts of the global south, from Guatemala to the Democratic Republic of Congo to Indonesia. Back to Iran, the Trump administration also engaged in a campaign of economic warfare, attempting to cut off all exports of Iranian oil, and it unilaterally exited the nuclear agreement in 2018, that is, Trump did, leading to the reinstitution of devastating sanctions against Iran. These sanctions over the years have inflicted great harm on the Iranian people, leading to uncontrollable inflation, unemployment, and greatly reduced access to medical care. Trump's unprovoked assault on Iran is the latest phase of a rampage in which the administration is making war and militarism central features of life in the US. The US and Israel opened this war by launching attacks across Iran on the morning of February 28. In its bombing of a girls' school in Minab with a current death toll of 155, with the majority little children, as well as joining Israel in bombing civilian infrastructure such as hospitals in Iran, the US government is engaging in war crimes. It must be held accountable. And while brazen, aggressive US military action in the 21st century did not begin with Donald Trump, the current president is simply bringing the unvarnished reality of US militarism into the spotlight. By doing so, he has exposed the deeply unpopular and undemocratic nature of US foreign policy. In this moment, anti-war organizers must seize upon this new awareness and outrage to build movements against escalating US militarism. Trump predecessors were more selective in exposing the public to the machinations of the war machine. For example, former President George W. Bush's invasion of Afghanistan after 9/11 and his catastrophic shock and awe occupation of Iraq were undertaken with extraordinary publicity, such as the speech he gave under a mission accomplished banner a mere 6 weeks after the invasion of Iraq began. The Pentagon, the intelligence establishment, and the police have been collaborating for decades. They have learned by doing, carrying out night raids, airstrikes, abductions, and other violent actions across the Middle East, Central Asia, Africa, and elsewhere in countless military operations in the post-9/11 wars, in the process forcing millions of people to flee their homes. But these highly publicized attacks were also conducted alongside covert wars in Pakistan and Somalia. Months after the second Trump administration took office, it bombed Somalia in what the Pentagon boasted was the largest airstrike in the history of the world. Trump subsequently bombed Yemen for weeks. He joined Israel in its war on Iran and dropped massive bombs on Iran in June 2025. Trump ended 2025 by bombing Nigeria on Christmas Day. And he's appealing to the most war-loving section of his base, but sending a message to all of us. Military violence will be a fact of life, and you should get used to it. This is why it is so important that we refuse to get used to it. Building on the outpouring of protest against U.S. support for Israel's genocide in Gaza, it is critical that people in the U.S. are confronting Trump's attacks. The challenge will be making sure that as we oppose and resist Trump's most egregious violations of international law and people's human rights, that we do not stop there. We should also do our utmost to hold the US government accountable for its foreign policy decisions that have led to disastrous consequences for millions around the world and try to prevent additional wars. This is obviously not a theoretical proposition, as the US government is once again sounding out a belligerent tone and actually threatening military action against Colombia, and it has already attacked Venezuela and kidnapped the Venezuelan president, not to mention the devastating US and Israeli war against Iran and Lebanon that has already led to the displacement of millions of people. We must hold our congressional representatives accountable and demand that they stop funding the war. Looking into the US history, it was only through massive and sustained mobilization of US public against the war in Vietnam that forced the US government to end its disastrous military intervention there. The US has no business to intervene in any country, whether in the name of so-called counterterrorism, so-called democracy promotion, or state building. It is time to revive the anti-war movement in the US in order to push the political establishment to abandon its imperialist policies and white savior tendencies. The US should also acknowledge the calamitous impact of US intervention in other countries and pay reparations to the peoples and countries that it has invaded, destroyed, and exploited over the past centuries. By recognizing that Trump's actions were built on decades of bipartisan collaboration, we can reject the idea of returning to an imaginary peaceful past and become conscious of the need to resist all acts of injustice before they escalate into global catastrophes. Though Trump campaigned as an opponent of the post 9/11 wars, he's instead updating those wars for a new, more aggressive and visible era. We need to dismantle the war machine in its entirety. Thank you.
In its entirety. Y'all make some noise for Azadeh for putting that in such brilliant political, global context. And as we sew together our understandings of what's happening internationally, how it's impacting us nationally, across the state, and within our city, I'd love to bring it back around to Rosario from Georgia Latino Alliance for Human Rights. Had a little bit of technical difficulty earlier, but we are so thrilled for them to have rejoined the call. I want to pass it over to you to bring us back in grounding in stories from the front lines of the struggle against militarization here in Georgia. Take it away, Rosario.
And Rosario, if you're there, you should be able to unmute.
Rosario, ¿le puedes quitar el mute?
We've all been there, folks. I know not a single one of us on this call have avoided the trap, get stuck on mute. But you know what? We're not going to let Zoom silence us. We're not going to let the stage silence us. We're going to continue to speak out and give powerful testimony to help bring people into the struggle. And in the spirit of making sure we all leave here with what we need to continue this fight, I'm going to, in the meantime, pass it back over to Priyanka Bhatt, Senior Staff Attorney with Project South, to bring us back. You know, we back on the local, we back on the state side, thinking about the ways that policies passed in the 2026 legislative session are impacting immigrant communities and our struggle for immigrant justice. So Priyanka, please talk to us about some of the bills, not just the impacting our immigrant brothers and sisters, but expanding criminalization across the state.
Si ella no habla fuerte, si ella no está hablando, métete
Thank
tú.
you, Mariah. One of the ways we can be ready is by knowing what the laws are, right? And demystifying the whole legislative process for all of our community members. We can't be fighting back if we don't know what we're fighting. So with that, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the bills we've been fighting the past few years. Thank you, Annie. If you can bump it one more slide. All right. So here at Project South, we've been monitoring, analyzing, and fighting back against bills in the Georgia legislative session for many, many years now, along with our partners, many of whom are on the call today. Every year, we fought back against different bills that target, surveil, and attack our community members. Bills that expand police power, criminalize protest activity, punish speech, mandate local law enforcement collaboration with federal agencies, and do a lot more harm. Unfortunately, the last few years have been no different. So today I'll be talking about a few of the bills that passed over the last 2 years. And we can bump it to the next slide. So last year, HB 161 passed and was signed into law. This bill is a huge surveillance bill. Essentially, it expands the Georgia Bureau of Investigation's authority to subpoena, without any type of warrant, a very large amount of electronic communication records information to investigate certain offenses like domestic terrorism. And we know that has been notoriously used unjustly to target and prosecute protesters. So that means they can get information from phone companies, internet service providers, email providers, messaging apps, and social media platforms. The bill also mandates that the subpoena not be made public during the investigation. So the individual may never know that their information was subpoenaed until if they're actually prosecuted. So what does that all mean? That means if GBI is investigating someone for domestic terrorism, they can go directly to Google, AT&T, Verizon, Facebook, and ask for all the metadata without any type of warrants. So metadata means the name, the address, payment information, telephone connection records, and the call history, the IP address and location, login information on apps. That's a lot of information, right? So that enables GBI to map out organizing networks without ever having to do a search warrant, and to do it all in secret. The target doesn't know, the public doesn't know, and the company cannot disclose it while the investigation is going on. So extremely, extremely concerning surveillance that could be allowed through this law, and it was signed into law by Governor Kemp last year. And we can move to the next slide. So another very, very concerning bill that passed by the legislature this year and is awaiting Governor Kemp's signature is Senate Bill 443. This is a bill that directly targets protesters. It essentially makes obstructing a road or a highway a high and aggravated misdemeanor punishable by up to a year in jail or a fine of up to $5,000. The bill also allows protesters to be held liable in court for damages that arise out of the protest, like medical costs. The bill also makes it an automatic misdemeanor if you block a sidewalk or a public passageway and don't heed to law enforcement call to move. So we know that marching on the roads, on the highways, on bridges is an important and popular protest tactic that has been used historically. This is a picture from 1964 of people marching through the road, blocking traffic during the civil rights movement. And we've seen it right here in Atlanta during many of her protests. So this bill is clearly meant to scare and intimidate protest activity at a time where our people are wanting to speak out against the horrific actions that this administration is taking, from wars globally and wars happening right here in this country. So this bill is essentially intimidating protesters to not show up, right? By threatening them with fines, jail time, and the possibility of lawsuits. And the next, thank you, Annie. In addition to all the bills that increase surveillance and criminalize protest activity, legislators also passed a bill that would punish unhoused communities and immigrants. And this is a bill that is part of a national trend pushed by the Goldwater Institute to crack down on unhoused communities. It already passed in Arizona and has been introduced in other states like Texas. It's an incredibly cruel and inhumane bill that incentivizes the over-enforcement of laws that criminalize unhoused communities instead of providing real solutions like allocating funds for housing or mental health services. Georgia's bill is a little bit different than the other bills because in addition to this, they also tacked on an anti-immigrant provision as well. So under the bill, it would allow individuals to submit a claim against their government if they believe their local government is not enforcing anti-homeless or anti-sanctuary laws. That means they can demand reimbursements for expenses they apparently incurred for taking matters into their own hands. And they can even sue the locality if the local government does not respond within 30 days. This is a huge scare tactic. It is essentially forcing localities to create and enforce harsher policies against the unhoused communities and immigrants just to prevent liability under this law and under this bill. And we are incredibly concerned because we know the World Cup is not too far away. And we saw what happened to the unhoused communities in Atlanta during the Olympics, right? We saw City Council pass a bunch of ordinances that criminalized the unhoused community. They built the Atlanta jail right before the Olympics, where many unhoused community members were arrested and taken to. Reports say that around 9,000 unhoused individuals were arrested leading up to or during the Olympics. Some were even given a one-way bus ticket out of Atlanta with no other resources, and a total of 30,000 Atlanta residents were displaced from their homes. Given this, we are incredibly worried that this bill will be used in a similar way. So we've been fighting to fight this bill We have been fighting this bill the last 2 years with our comrades at GLAHR and Housing Justice League. I will share our action alert. We are calling for a veto of this bill. It is not too late. We are going to keep fighting. We've also partnered with local and national allies who are also worried about the bill. I'll share our press statement in the chat and the op-ed that some of the coalition members wrote. And with that, I'll pass it to Steph to share a little bit more about how we can fight back.
Thanks, Priyanka. We're going to actually, before we get into the fight back, we just want to hear one more voice from the front line. So I'll pass back to Ms. Florencia, if you're able to come off mute and share with us from the Georgia Latino Alliance for Human Rights.
Sí. Hola, buenas tardes. Florencia Cepeda y pues yo lo que les quiero decir es que nosotros aquí como inmigrantes pues nos toca muy difícil en este estado de Georgia. Am, Como nosotros sabemos es el cuarto estado que está haciendo pues las detenciones, ¿verdad? De inmigrantes indocumentados. Y la experiencia pues siempre es muy complicada. Nosotros antes de salir a las calles siempre tenemos que estar pues revisando los chats, revisando las redes sociales, lo que nosotros decimos pues échale un ojo a la migra, ¿verdad? Entonces, la experiencia de ser indocumentado pues siempre es difícil. Por ejemplo, en mi caso yo tengo una enfermedad también crónica y siempre es todavía más difícil enfrentarnos a situaciones médicas, ¿no? Entonces, esto es una manera en la que la criminalización que nosotros vivimos, pues nos coarta o nos limita todavía más opciones que pues deberíamos de tener esos derechos. Am, entonces, pues ser un inmigrante indocumentado, pues actualmente en todo el país es muy complicado. Aquí en Georgia tiene muchas limitaciones. Yo escucho que hay otros estados donde es un poco más suave el asunto, como en Chicago, pero aquí siempre es muy difícil la situación para nosotros. Las mujeres también enfrentamos siempre un salario más bajo en muchos gremios del trabajo. Em, y pues nosotros pensamos, o yo me uno a esta llamada porque como trabajadora, pues hoy no salí a trabajar y me quedé a apoyar y me involucro aquí porque siento que si nosotros no peleamos por nosotros, pues ¿quién lo va a hacer, verdad? Nosotros tenemos un lema que dice, solo el pueblo salva al pueblo y creemos que en estos momentos la comunidad inmigrante, yo que soy inmigrante, si no salgo yo a dar la cara o a dar mi voz, pues ¿quién más lo va a hacer por mí? Sé que hay organizaciones como ustedes que la dan, pero también sé que tengo que participar yo y volverme activa, invitar a mucha otra gente como yo que se vuelva activa en sus comunidades y que trate pues de empujar los cambios que necesitamos para poder vivir con dignidad y respeto. Esa sería mi participación. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Florencia. Thank you, GLAHR, for all the organizing and incredible resistance on these front lines, y'all. Clearly, across the globe and in Atlanta, ICE is here. The police are ramping up. The World Cup is coming June 15th to July 15th. But May Day is a test for us. May Day is a test to see how prepared are we? How organized are we? How coordinated are we? And this huge 100 folks on this call on May Day this afternoon, I think really shows the power of solidarity, the power of coming together, that we are stronger when we do come together and that we need each other. The workers are coming together. Young people are coming together. We know that we can, when we come together, we can fight and get ready. My name is Stephanie Gilliu. I work with Project South here in Atlanta, and the World Cup, as folks have laid out, is another big test for Atlanta and for a lot of sites around the country. And we know that, as Priyanka was saying, that these big international events are an excuse and a justification to expand police and ICE presence. They are going to be testing drones and checkpoints and curfews and surveillance. And we know that Atlanta is already one of the most surveilled communities and cities in the world. But we are getting ready. We are coming together and we are organizing sanctuary zones. So we want to invite you all into this coordination, into this attempt to organize across Atlanta, across the specific areas that we know there's going to be police escalations around the World Cup, because we also know where those police escalations are going to be places where our folks get criminalized. So we know that these sanctuary zones can be spaces that we offer people safe haven to not be criminalized, to find each other, to start to build public safety on our terms. And I want to offer, and we'll just pull up maybe the slide, Annie, with the sanctuary zone definition, if we can. What we have done, many of you have been a part of fighting Cop City, been part of organizing for mutual aid and safety in your communities, organizing our folks to provide for each other and to learn and train up how to resist ICE and push back. One of the ways we have been doing that is the People's Movement Assemblies. There's been 3 big People's Movement Assemblies in Atlanta, and we made a definition collectively of what we mean by community safety and public safety, and it's not the police, and it's not ICE. Public safety is rooted in our shared experiences of neighbors protecting neighbors, alongside organized systems and third spaces that provide accountability and meet everyone's basic needs on our own terms. That's our collective Atlanta-based definition of community safety. We want to make it real, y'all. The vision for the sanctuary zones is a network of these businesses, of churches, of independent shops, coffee shops, bars, where we go, where our schools are, where our faith centers are, that are committed to preventing and interrupting the criminalization of all of our folks, right? So it's a space specifically that commits to protecting our neighbors, to not allow ICE entry without that judicial warrant, and we can share resources to make sure that your space and site knows how to protect and how to defend, and that we do not rely on policing as the first response. That's where we're going to start, y'all, in terms of this vision of an organized, prepared, and powerful Atlanta. And I'm going to pass it to Jamar just to, let's go actually to this next slide, and then I'll pass to Jamar. The next slide shows where we think and where we're going to keep researching and verifying and learning the different zones of where the World Cup is going to be super policed, because they're bringing in folks from other places, they're expanding their operations, and we want to keep our folks safe, keep law enforcement entanglements at a bare minimum, and we want to look at these high traffic areas, do our recon, invite folks that are in these areas to act as sanctuary zones and really prevent the criminalization of all the folks, particularly Black, migrant, youth, trans and queer, and unsheltered folks who are already experiencing super high levels of policing and repression. So we want to offer the sanctuary zone vision as a way to build with each other beyond the World Cup and into the election season, into the next seasons that we know are going to bring different levels of crisis. We want to be ready. So I'll pass to Jamar to describe a little bit more about how we can get our sanctuary zones up and running.
Yeah, good evening, y'all. Jamar Rahim with Project South. Just an honor to be on, even as I'm kind of in motion here. But really, this call for partners and community members to generate these ICE-free sanctuary zones really is a call to reclaim the power that we have to really force the hand of the state to not show up, to not be there, and getting all the preparation we can so that we can hold these community spaces as real sanctuaries. And so the resources that Steph was alluding to, we do want to have available for folks. And knowing that not every incident is a criminal incident, like that's just a reality. And so the knee-jerk or an antiquated response to the past to call the police for all the things is just one that we have to rethink, knowing that the police are not the best to respond in most instances. And so first off, like knowing that that's just a last resort. They're not coming with the resources we need to manage the majority of things that happen in our communities, and thus they should not be our first call. But instead, the ability to know directly who are our services. Is it the firehouse down the block? Is it the emergency transport at the local medical facility? How do we have those numbers on deck and think to call them as a primary resource? A lot of communities are developing in here in and around Atlanta the policing alternative, the pre-arrest divisions, right? Some community resources that are getting state funds to be able to show up and support in a way, to intervene in a way that does not criminalize community members and helps to de-escalate and resolve situations without people having to, one, be detained, and then two, go into indefinite detention in some of these wild facilities. A third resource that we're working to build the muscle in our communities is how to assess the scenario. How do you look at a thing that's going on in the community and be able to say, well, is this a utility emergency? Is this a medical emergency? Does this really call for some other resource beyond our internal network here that would need for us to then hit up an emergency services or hit up an alternative to policing resource? And then lastly, maybe is, how do we then train up around de-escalation so that the thing that starts off as a crisis can get moved down from an orangey-orange to a greener situation, and it can be managed in that way. And so there are just a lot of alternatives that we hope when people are envisioning their sanctuary spaces and understanding that there's a right of refusal to ICE and their wildness, especially in the absence of the proper warrants. And there are a list of resources to call on prior to ever having to call the police to intervene in a scenario that they're probably not best to intervene on in the first place. And so those resources, I think, are floating around in the chat. If folks are really interested in connecting their organizations or their spaces or their institutions in becoming a sanctuary space for now and into the future, please follow some of the prompts that are being made available so that you can get connected in that way and be on the lookout for some of these other resources.
Thanks, Jamar.
Let's give it up for Jamar, y'all. Thank you so much. I know we're talking about all that we're up against with this global war machine, with the laws that are being passed here locally, with the stories that folks are sharing and how it's impacting our community. But what is beautiful about May Day and about this gathering of folks moving forward is that we do have the people power necessary to refuse ICE, to refuse criminalization, to keep our people safe on our pathway to building a world that works for all working people. And if you are with me in that fight, I'm gonna need y'all to take some of these action steps before you even leave here today, but certainly in the days to come. If you have not yet, sign on via this link in the chat to organize toward a sanctuary zone where you live, where you pray, where you work. You can connect with the Union of Southern Service Workers for support organizing your workplace to become a Fourth Amendment workplace. And if you are interested in canvassing in Atlanta to establish sanctuary zones, we are going to be hitting the streets May 16th to get out the word, to build our people power, and we need you in that outreach. So please go and sign up to organize towards these sanctuary zones across our city. If you haven't yet today, let the world know you about this life. Post out pictures and reels with posters and hashtags from today so folks know that you are a part of getting ready in Atlanta for the World Cup for escalations. If they dare bring them, we will be ready. And a part of this overall beauty of this moment is a part of the May Day Strong movement. You can also tag SNAPCO, Solutions Not Punishment Collective, on if you're sharing things on Instagram. But should they dare, Sam? Exactly, should they dare? Now let's talk a little bit about upcoming trainings. Let's get ready by skilling ourselves up, building the skills and knowledge we need to fight back. On May 4th, There's going to be a policing and migration webinar. May 15th, Compass at the Gates of ICE with Casa Alterna coming up. We also have the next Document and Verify training with the Georgia Latino Alliance for Human Rights on May 20th. We have another amazing community medic training with Project South. If you're also not only learning how to keep our communities safe, but keep our communities healthy. June 10th is the last day to apply to be part of that training. So be on the lookout for that deadline. And I know that was a lot. We learned a lot of great things today. So if you need to run this back to give yourself time to soak it all in, we will be sharing this recording out afterwards and encourage you all to tell a friend, to tell a friend, to tell a friend about this movement we are building to get ready for whatever may come. Because whatever may come, I have utter faith that with the folks on this call and the folks that you all bring into this movement, I truly do believe that we can win. So with that, y'all, it's 4:03 on the dot. Not only are we ready, we timely with it. So please take a moment as you all head out to the rest of your day. Maybe you're going to mobilizations. Maybe you're going out in the streets to talk to folks about what you learn. Take some of these resources with you and let's get to work. We have a world to win, and I believe that we will win. Thank you all so much for being here. Happy May Day. We'll see you out here in the streets soon. Great many thanks once again to our partners at Project South, at the Southeast Immigrant Rights Network, Georgia Latino Alliance for Human Rights, El Refugio, SNAPCO, Asian Americans Advancing Justice, Atlanta People's Campaign, Casa Alterna, Bard Business, and State ATL. And to all of you who are here with us today, make some noise for yourselves as we close out. We will see you soon.